Hello everyone, VVizard here, once again, a little sooner than expected. This time, I'm joined by a relatively newer workshop creator, JH. It was a pleasure working with you on this new character. Speaking of, let's check them out.
September 28th, daylight. The monsters have overtaken the city. Somehow, I'm still alive.
Brad, hang in there. Why isn't someone doing something about this?
I didn't know you were still alive, Jill. The police aren't trained for this kind of situation. What could they do? Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die.
What are you saying?
You'll see. He's after S.T.A.R.S members. There's no escape. Jill!
Brad!
We've gotta... Jill! Help!
It's one of gaming's most iconic villains, Nemesis-T Type, also known simply as Nemesis, hailing from the acclaimed Resident Evil franchise. Nemesis started development quite some time ago, over a year to be precise, as JH's first character back when he was new to the community. However, since he didn't have any real coding experience at the time, I approached him hoping to team up and bring this character to life, and the rest was history. Now, why did I approach JH for this? And why did he start development on Nemesis for that matter? Well, that's a question you'll have to ask him. But for those unaware, Resident Evil is my favorite gaming series of all time. From when I was a child, seeing my dad playing the original Resident Evil 2 on our PlayStation and being terrified of it, to now, recently playing the latest Resident Evil release on the day it comes out. This series has always been with me, and so I took this opportunity, as I always wanted to properly represent this series I love so much in Rivals of Aether Workshop. Now, I did say that I want to properly represent this series. In the past, I released a Resident Evil mod for Workshop, that being Claire Redfield. Since I'm not much of a spriter, and Claire was one of my first characters, she's super jank. She's actually a sprite rip edit of Leona from Metal Slug, though this works surprisingly well, all things considered. This Claire had some unique ideas, like her weapons, inventory management, and a zombie mechanic, the later finally being revisited now with Nemesis. Okay, without further ado, I give the stage to JH, so we can go more into detail about this monster.
Nemesis first appeared as the titular antagonist of Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, released in 1999. Introduces an unstoppable monster who relentlessly chases Jill throughout the game. She isn't able to fight back against him at first, so all she can do is survive. Since his debut, he has proven to be quite an iconic villain for the franchise, appearing in crossover games such as Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Dead by Daylight. A lot of his moves and rivals take inspiration from said appearances. Nemesis plays like a sort of boss character, similarly to Ridley or King K. Rool in Smash. He's big and has powerful, overwhelming attacks, but slower and more vulnerable to combos in return. Though Nemesis may seem unstoppable, one can easily hold their own against him by not being afraid and making proper use of their resources, just like you would in a survival horror game. How did we translate Nemesis into a game like Rivals of Aether? As mentioned before, we took some points from his appearance in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, mainly his tentacle attacks and his simple yet strong physical strikes. He overall packs quite a punch. Despite being very big, Nemesis' grounded speed is also quite fast for a character his size, which ties into his nature as a pursuer in Resident Evil 3. By closing in on his opponent, his terrifying durability also comes into play. While he's walking and running, he has soft armor against projectiles. He's quite bulletproof. Since he's a walking biohazard, Nemesis' central mechanic is none other than the T-virus infection. All of Nemesis' tentacle attacks have a tipper hitbox, and hitting these tippers infects his opponent. As you can see with this indicator next to them, they are now infected. Passively, the T-virus is not unlike Rano's poison, in which attacking causes you to take a bit of damage. The infection will wear off on its own, or if Nemesis gets parried, but you can also cure it yourself. How? By KOing Nemesis, he'll drop a small supply case which conveniently contains a vaccine to the T-virus. When you pick up this vaccine, you can either press special and parry to cure yourself or hold on to it and save it for later. In addition, you temporarily gain immunity to any further infections for a limited amount of time. You only get one vaccine at a time though, so use it wisely. Now, let's pass this showcase back to VVizard.
For his neutral special, he wields a rocket launcher. Similar to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and also his appearance in the Resident Evil games, Nemesis aims down the sight and shoots a missile forward. This missile explodes on impact and packs quite the punch. However, there is a caveat. Considering how tall Nemesis is, it can be hard to hit enemies with his missiles. That's totally okay, however, since this highly airbound missile serves more as a way to limit movement and corner his opponents. In the air, Nemesis simply shoots diagonally down, making it much easier to hit grounded opponents. For Nemesis' forward special, it's his Tentacle Slam. Again, like in the Resident Evil games and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Nemesis uses his long-range tentacle to try and grab anyone in front of him. If you land the grab normally, Nemesis simply erases his opponents, then slams them downward. This is great to start combos or to do follow-ups, but that's not all. If you hit an opponent with this move while they're infected, Nemesis will instead use his tentacle to impale his opponent, causing massive damage and knockback for a mighty KO option. For his up special, it's the Tyrant Deployment. Nemesis mimics how Mr. X arrives in the original Resident Evil 2, by jumping very high and coming crashing back down with all of his strength. This is an armored and very powerful move, with a devastating spike hitbox to boot. However, its linearity makes it very easy to be punished and edge-guarded, which is why you can mix it up by pressing parry, thus cancelling the final part of the move. Now for last, but certainly not least, Nemesis' other main mechanic, to which I'll give the stage to JH once again.
Nemesis' down special is called Mass Outbreak. This is an original move. Nemesis lifts a giant piece of rubble from beneath him before slamming it down with all his strength. This move can be performed both on the ground or in the air, and has different strengths depending on which version is used. On the ground, he gains a bit of armor, and in the air, this move is performed faster, and he gets a small burst of movement. This isn't the main appeal of the move, however. Look at what's emerging from the rubble. A zombie. This zombie as a stage control mechanic was inspired by VVizard's older Claire Redfield mod, as well as what Nemesis can do in Dead by Daylight. The zombie acts independently of Nemesis. It'll walk back and forth looking for its next snack, falling off platforms, and turning around at ledges. If the zombie happens to run into any other character aside from Nemesis himself, it'll attack them. The zombie can either claw at its victim, which infects them with the T-virus. If they're already infected, it'll grab onto them and bite them for extra damage. Since this locks the opponent in place, it's a perfect setup for combos or kills. However, as with Nemesis' F special, the zombie's enhanced attack will remove the opponent's infection. Zombies can be hit by other players, which makes it take knockback. The zombie has a finite amount of HP, so it can be killed by hitting it enough times. If you're brave enough, you can also try parrying it, which kills it instantly. Killing a zombie is very beneficial, since they also drop a T-virus vaccine upon death. Nemesis can interact with his own zombie in a multitude of ways, either throwing it around with his F special, or making it jump with the impact of his U special. That's not all. Nemesis can instantly destroy a zombie by firing a rocket at it. Doing so makes the zombie explode in quite a gruesome fashion, which functions as a very strong attack and also infects opponents with the T-virus. Now, before we move on to Nemesis' home stage, let's take a look at some of his other notable moves.
For Nemesis' forward strong, he pulls out his now iconic flamethrower from his appearance in the Resident Evil 3 remake. This move covers a lot of range in front of him, so his opponents really need to watch out. For Nemesis' up strong, it's a very unique command grab. He prepares himself and then tries to scoop up anyone in front of him with his rocket launcher, before blowing them to smithereens. This move is also based on the Resident Evil 3 remake, being one of the executions he can perform on Jill Valentine. Similar to my previous Buffy mod, Nemesis also shakes the screen whenever he walks, dashes, or lands. The sound effect used is even the same one from the original Resident Evil 3. Nemesis has two taunts, a standard taunt and an up taunt. For both, he says his iconic catchphrase, S.T.A.R.S. The difference being that the up taunt is a bit more subdued, while the regular taunt has him shouted. Fun fact, the standard taunt actually has a bit of armor as well. And finally, for Nemesis' trailer, it opens in the same way as the intro to the original Resident Evil 3, with Jill delivering her very iconic monologue, September 28th, daylight. Very fitting for today. The trailer sees future McDucky sporting her Jill-inspired alt, fighting against monsters in Raccoon City. She then runs into a yellow nade, representing her colleague, Brad Vickers, where he tells us about a threat hunting them down. That's where Nemesis comes. Just like his introduction cutscene, Nemesis appears and kills off Brad right in front of Jill, and immediately after that, she must make a choice, again taking the live selection mechanic from the original game. And now, let's take a look at his home stage, none other than Raccoon City.
Nemesis' home stage, Raccoon City, takes place in the midst of the zombie apocalypse that occurred in Resident Evil 2 and 3. The atmosphere is very dark and gloomy, fitting for a stage that originates from a horror series. It's always raining and there's not a soul in sight, except maybe that poor zombie that got impaled over there. This stage's layout is similar to the forest floor. Though the main stage looks like a scrambled mess from all the destruction wrought, it's actually perfectly symmetrical. Try jumping on that totaled police car. It gets a bit rickety from having so much weight put on it. This stage comes with 4 tracks. Unstoppable Nemesis from the original Resident Evil 3, both the original and remake versions of Metamorphosis, and Saudade, the ending theme from Resident Evil 2 Remake. This stage was a collaborative effort between me and Clay, who helped out with many of the background elements. Thanks again for your beautiful work. In addition to Clay, who helped bring Raccoon City to life, there were many other talented creators who pitched in on this long-running project. Thank you to Delta Parallax for the custom visual effects, Spider-Boy for the art on Nemesis' preview image, Juponia for the splash text on said preview image and our music selection template, and of course, VVizard for hopping in on this project since the beginning and showing me the ropes back when I was first getting into Rivals Workshop as a whole.
And so with that, this is the end of the presentation. It feels really nice to finally represent this incredible series properly here on Workshop. It also feels very fitting for us to pick Nemesis, considering he's one of the most iconic villains and monsters in Resident Evil, and really, all of media as a whole. With him also somewhat representing aspects of survival horror gameplay in his design, it all worked out so nicely. Of course, none of this would have been possible without JH. He really was the main creator behind this character, seeing to each of Nemesis' new animations getting better and better the more JH grew used to working for Rivals. It truly was a sight to behold. It was a ginormous pleasure working with you on this, and here's hoping you can create even more incredible stuff in Workshop going forward. Thank you to everyone involved in this project. Everyone does such a spectacular job all around. Now let's keep an eye out for my upcoming VVizard's Final Frenzy. We still need to work a bit more before it's all done, so I ask for a bit more patience. But we're making steady progress, and it should all be worth it in the end. So, once again, thank you all for watching. I hope you've all enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you enjoy using Nemesis and his home stage, which should be available right now. And I'll see you all next time.